is great and all, but like, it's really good to get into the spot where you're kind of considering the needs of parents and students. All right, so let's do it.
We're recording this too, so this will all be on our website when we're done.
Okay, yeah.
We're recording this side, we're not recording the FERPA 201 because there's secret police.
And also, like, one of our concerns with recording is we wanted to make sure no one felt uncomfortable kind of like disclosing the issues that they're facing in their own district. So we'll go back through the video and edit out anything that is an experience you guys are sharing that might be, you know, a not awesome reflection on your school. I want you to be able to be honest because we all have like major struggles with privacy. That's not abnormal, but I don't want you to feel like you're gonna get busted for it by talking about it in this session. Okay, so first we'll talk about what is okay or legal to post on school websites or school social media feeds. To do that, we need to talk about identifying what is an education record. Some of you are kind of comfortable with that, some of you are less comfortable, so we'll get kind of in the weeds on that a little bit. After we've identified what education records are, we're going to talk about the 2 ways that you could legally post an education record on social media or a school website. One of the ways to do that is with the directory information opt-out. If this is like totally unfamiliar language to you, don't worry, we'll talk about it. And the second way to do that is to get parent consent, which most people do so using what they call a media release. I've sometimes heard them called web releases, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we'll get into the what you should post. Okay, so what is legal? FERPA protects education records. So FERPA doesn't protect all types of student data. For example, if you were to be, like if you're a teacher in a school and you walk down the hall and you see some kid punch another kid in the face, FERPA technically doesn't forbid you from going and telling other people about that because you just saw it happen, so it's not an education record. Probably, I think we'd all agree that it's best to not be sharing that kind of information just willy-nilly. But I guess what I'm getting at is that FERPA just is very specific in focusing on what is considered an education record. For that reason, we're going to practice deciding what education records are when it comes to photos and videos. Okay, so here we have 3 pictures. Any thoughts on these education records or not? I heard a no.
Yes, maybe.
Okay, Drew says yes to this one, maybe to this one, no to this one. Anyone else have a differing opinion?
Depends on how you classify it, but the one on the left could be because you're attaching a name to a picture.
Right, yeah, good. Okay, so let's talk about how FERPA would define this. So, first question that you have to ask, every education record is defined by 2 things. If it's maintained by the school, that's why the person who saw a kid punch another kid in the face, they could legally tell someone else about it because the school isn't maintaining that information, it's just something that's in their brain. So maintained by the school is the big one. That one's a little easier to just decide because basically if it's on a school website or the district website, you can consider it to be maintained by the school. This is the second one that I imagine is probably what had you guys a little stumped. Does it directly relate to a student? Okay, so Mike said this one clearly does because you brought the name there, right? What about this one? Does that directly relate to a student? This one? Okay, let's talk about it. So, PTAC, these guys, have put out some guidance on this. They acknowledge that it's hard to tell. But this is interesting. This is kind of the rubric you use, I guess, to decide if something is considered directly related to a student. If the person taking the photo or video intends to make a specific student or students the focus of the photo or video. So we'll go back to those pictures in a minute, but that might change your answer on some of these. So were they intended to be the focus? The other thing that might be less common is you have a photo that doesn't necessarily have one student specifically the focus, but there's other student data in there. Like, the there's some kid that's like holding up his name, you can't see his face or anything, but he has a piece of paper that has his name on it, that's also considered an education record. Okay, how are we doing so far? So maintained by the school, directly related to a student. How do we know if it's directly related to a student? If they are intended to be the focus of the photo or video, or if there's other student PII there. We good? Okay, let's look back at those 3 photos we were just talking about. John, will you give me like a 10-minute warning
Oh, yeah,
so I don't just go crazy?
yeah, okay.
Thanks. All right, so let's walk through this one. Is it maintained by the school? Yes, because it's on the school's social media. Does it directly relate to a student?
Yes.
Yeah, that kid is clearly the focus, plus his name is right there with it. And so is it an education record? Yes. The whole reason we're going through this exercise is because now we have determined that this needs to be protected by FERPA, so we have to follow FERPA rules when we're considering if we can post this or not. Okay, next one. Maintained by the school? Yep, it's on the district website. Does it directly relate to a student? Drew, you're saying yes, how come?
Because it's a direct picture of that group of kids, not so like in the background of something else, it's a picture of them.
Right, you can tell the photographer intended to take a picture of those 5 girls, right? By the way, isn't that just a cute picture? I love it. They're so cute, that's at Twila High. I used to work in Twila District. Yeah, I think you're right, Drew. I think it would be hard to argue that this is not directly related to a student. It's related to those 5 girls, and so that means that it becomes an education record for those 5 girls. What about someone back in the background?
No.
Even if they're identifiable?
It could be enough for any reason.
Right, yeah, you're right, it's not the focus, right? Yes, very good. Okay, so that's an education record. How about this one? Maintained by the school? Yes. Does it directly relate to a student? No, because a picture like this is nice because it's very easy to tell that it's not directly related to anyone's student. You can't even tell who's who, right? So this is definitely not related to a student. And thus, is it an education record? No, so that photo, you don't have to treat it with FERPA rules. You could just plaster that all over town if you wanted to. We'll get to the should later, but technically with FERPA, not an education record doesn't need to be protected like FERPA records.
Okay, so when schools record football games and stuff like that, and they call out students for plays and stuff like that, is that an education record?
Yeah, that's a great question. Did you guys hear? Recording a football, they're calling out.
Or any sporting
Or
event,
a football.
wrestling, basketball, football,
Sure.
and they're recording it, and they say, well, this player did this, or this player did that, or he ran for this, or he had a great shot, or.
Yeah, great question. What I didn't mention is the guidance from PTAC. I mentioned the photo and video. They specifically say that that includes audio. So if you, a few things, like if you zoomed in and were like following a kid as he was going in for a layup or whatever. I changed to basketball because that's the only sport I know.
It's fine. It
Football.
relates.
The kid was doing the thing, running. So if they like visually zoomed in on that kid and were like following them, that would make it an education record in that way. But also, if it wasn't visually focused on anyone, but there was the audio that's saying, that's Jake Thomas, he's doing this whole thing, then yeah, that would make an education record. Good question. Any other questions so far? Okay, so let's do a little, oh, this is actually, I love this one. Yes.
So what about a yearbook photo of the orchestra? This is specifically the orchestra, and these 20 or however many students are playing this. That is for fun, right?
It's a good question, and I would say, this is where FERPA I think is tricky. I think someone could argue, oh, there's so many kids there, it's not focused on any one or small number of students. To me, the debate about whether or not it's directly related to a student or not is less important than like, should you post the photo? So I don't have a strong answer for that, the school would have to decide. I probably, if I was giving guidance to someone, I would probably say if there's, 30 kids or something, I'd say it's probably not considered directly related to the student. But my recommendation for you would be to still treat it, especially if the kids are identifiable. If it's far away and blurry, then whatever. If the kids are identifiable, I would probably still personally treat it like a fruit punch.
I was thinking like the yearbook, anything in the yearbook
Yes,
is pretty much.
yes, absolutely. Anything in the yearbook, definitely.
Yearbook
School play.
School play, right? Yeah.
So is there no case law on that particular question about yearbook photos and that sort of thing? Nobody sued somebody and
That's a good question. I'm not sure if there's, certainly, like, in the guidance, they specifically mention school photos. There's no question about that. They also in the guidance specifically mention a student, like in a sports game, kids in the back don't matter, kid in the frame does matter. I don't know if there's been an exploration of a violation. I imagine people have issued complaints, but I'm not sure how they ruled on it. That's such a good question. So I don't have an answer for you now, but I am now motivated to look it up.
Sorry.
No, it's great. No, we want to be able to
We
support.
can ask the folks next door too
Oh.
in the break as well.
Definitely, that's a great idea, John. So how about this one? I also love this one. You give me the school, check. What else?
Identify some of the students.
Yeah, you can identify them. Does the ability to identify them automatically make it an education record?
Just directly relate to the student.
This could be a yearbook photo
But
again.
if it's at Twilla, that kid is from Stansbury, so how does that apply?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That would make this,
Assuming this is Twilla District's website.
yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a really good question, because technically would you have to check for an opt-out from there?
Yeah.
The thing about sports, and feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't personally know, but my understanding is when you sign up on that website, what's it called? Be My Sports Group, what is it called?
Register my athlete.
Register My Athlete, thank you. I'm so close. Register My Athlete, when you sign up on there, I believe that like part of that process is, it's either explicitly stated that like you can take photos and videos or whatever, or it might be just like built into a kind of broader, like, am I right? Is that included in that process? Cause what I've heard is that, oh, if you're on a school team, you've already given up your parents in this case have already like given permission to post photos and stuff of the students in a sports environment. Does anyone know?
Not sure, but I know that our media release covers this in the sense that sort of sporting events, concerts, if they're open to the public, then basically none of our stuff applies. Anyone can be taking pictures and we can't control any of it. So it's sort of a blanket warning of, hey, this may be photographed. Cause I can't, there's a million people in the audience taking pictures, and those aren't education records,
Right.
those are ours, so.
Right. And that is such an interesting point. I am almost certain that kid already signed some kind of waiver, yeah, you can, or his parent, signed some kind of waiver to have his photo and name on the rosters, all that jazz. If that wasn't the case, if it was something other than sports, which I can't imagine what that would be, but yeah, like, I guess technically you should have, yeah, but it would have to be a case where there's someone from another, you know what I mean? Like, this is at Chilhowee High, but it's a Stansbury kid. How do you handle that? I think you probably just don't post it. That would be my feeling. But all that is to say,
If it's Twilla High and we're losing, why would they post it? Just quite.
good point. So I think we could easily argue that this kid is intended to be a focus, right? That's the threshold. Are they intended to be the focus? What about this kid?
You can't tell who he is.
Definitely not.
I feel like that could be argued. Like maybe the goal is to catch all the athletes in this shot. What about that kid? Now that kid is definitely identifiable, right? So remember, the threshold is not if they're identifiable or
But he's
not.
not the focus.
It's if they're intended to be the focus. If it were me, I would make sure that I would check for all three of those kids to make sure, to see if any of them had opted out of sharing the data. again, with a sports event, I need to just figure out who I can talk to about that. But I believe they probably already waived their photo rights. Okay, I love this one. Okay, what do you think about this one? Maintained by the school, yeah. Does it directly relate to a student?
What's it called?
It's like art, it's subjective.
Like gardening, what is it?
Art.
Like art is subjective, like that girl could be the focus, but you're just catching people walking by. I guess it depends on what the other context around the picture is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that no, because those students aren't intended. Like the person taking the photo is capturing the dance, not the students,
Yeah.
or whatever that is.
It's freshman day, what do they call it? Something that I thought sounded crazy. Freshman transition day or something. No one wants
Well,
anyone
it's
to
the
know
day
that they're a
of the dead.
freshman. What's that?
Isn't it the Day of the Dead? Kind of the
No,
same
she
thing.
just has that shirt. So, this is another one that I feel like, oh, you could get into the weeds with FERPA, does it or does it not directly relate to a student? If you look at the should of it, that girl is clearly like where your eye is drawn. And so if I were that student, I would want this photo to be treated the same way my school photo was. Or a parent, certainly. Like if a parent had opted out of directory information, they wanted to make sure that their kid didn't have their photo posted online. Doesn't matter if that kid is clearly, the concentration of this photo, just the way the photo was shot. Technically, according to FERPA, you could argue that she's not the focus of the photo because they're just kids walking in the hall. You see what I'm saying? Are you loving that I'm like not giving you firm answers? Isn't that fun? True.
I guess I'll argue this, so you do get into that should world of, if you know your students, and you know that, because we have a lot of kids who opt out, parents who opt out just because there's a thing they can opt out of. They actually don't really wanna opt out, they just check the box, and we've occasionally had some where parents are like, I agents in there, they're absolutely like, no, this kid will show up nowhere. So it's really good to know that, because that can make that determination here of, oh, that's, Jane, and dear God, no, we need to not do anything.
Right.
Whereas this is just a student that's not probably gonna be a problem.
That brings up another good point, Drew. Thanks for sharing that. Because if you have a student like that you know that there's like a very legitimate reason, you know that the parent is adamant that they not be found online, then maybe this girl.
Yep.
Maybe you're looking for this girl, right? If she has opted out, you don't put that picture on there because it might be a safety violation or a safety risk for that kid, right? By the way, are we all on the same page as to like why a parent might opt out their kid? What are some reasons? You can just shout them out.
Child custody.
Child custody.
Issues.
Religious.
Witness protection.
Religious purposes, yeah, that's right. Witness protection. A lot of times with foster kids, they don't want the kids on the website. So there are very legitimate, for a small number of people, they have a very powerful and legitimate reason to keep their kid offline. That's why, one of the reasons I wanted to do this presentation is because I have become a little concerned as I'm talking with people. They talk about directory information like it's like a free-for-all. So like, don't worry, that information is directory information. But like that needs to be followed up by the question, have you checked for opt-outs? And if you haven't, then that's a big problem. If you haven't checked for opt-outs, you might be posting data that could or photos that could literally harm a student. So checking that opt-out piece is a very important second piece. Yeah.
What about a PTA Instagram account? They wanna post things, the pictures they take of activities.
That's a great question. I was actually gonna bring up the district too, because you mentioned why would the school post that? It's because the district took that photo. That's something that I know we faced in my school district. There's someone from the district there, snap, 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 and they might kind of casually check in. What I would hear a lot in schools is like, hey, I just took photos from this. Do you know if any kids had an opt-out or whatever? And they'd be like, nah, you're good. It's just very informal look at things. Same thing would happen with the PTA. They don't have access to who has opted out.
Well, and I'm just from a charter school, so they could get that information from us. But if they didn't and posted student pictures, is that considered a student record?
Well, the tricky thing there is that the PTA is not the school.
Right.
So that would be, if it's problematic, the school's not blamed for that. But like from a should perspective, they probably shouldn't be doing that unless they're getting like backs of heads or something like that. Yeah.
But don't most schools have a link or some connection on their website to their parent organization? So in that respect, I mean, it'd be hard to argue that, well, that's the PTA, you know, they can do what they want when you actively post their information on your website, which you wanna do because you want people to find them. So how does that creates a liability for us then, right?
Yeah, I think like legally you'd be okay, but legality is not the only thing that can really kill a school. It's public image. If you have parents that are mad, they don't care that like, in their mind, they're like, yeah, it's UTA, it is school. Like legally, no, they're not the same thing. But you make a really good point. Again, that puts us in the should area, where the should is actually the super easy way to evaluate things, rather than FERPA where you're getting into the like, oh, I don't know, are they, aren't they, you know. John?
I was just gonna say, I wonder if like seminary would be a similar example of like the PTA to where it's like a part of your school, but it's kind of not part of your school, but they could also have their own social media kind of mechanism. I guess maybe it's just paying attention to all the umbrella organizations that are under you as well, and just providing some sort of guidance, not like you have to, but you should check in with us.
I think there's a strong argument in favor of that, John. Like, not legally required, but it would be really cool.
Like
if
an
you have the
ethical
manager.
question.
Like a what?
It's not like a legal question, but it's more of an ethical question.
Right. Just like kind of keeping a lid on practices of anything that's related to the school.
Right.
And I don't know, one thing we'll talk about here is, like, it is possible to go too far to the detriment of the school or the students even. So it is always kind of a balance, but I think, again, if you have the manpower, I don't think it would hurt at all to be in communication with the PTA, kind of establish some ground rules. Yeah.
To his point, is we don't put any information on our website about, like, connect to the PTO's Instagram account or a Facebook account or something. We do have PTO information, we have a PTO relative PTO. We have their information of how to contact them, but we don't put, and I'm just from an elementary school, so I know that changes things for secondary. But is that a way to handle this, is to not put those kind of things on a website? For
Yeah, I think it could strengthen, like if you needed to make an argument to a parent that PTA is separate from the school, having that disconnected could strengthen that argument. Again, legally, I would be very surprised if the organization that they're a part of, the ones who investigate complaints about FERPA violations, I'd be shocked if they said that the school was in violation even if there was a link to the PTA. Unless, I guess, the PTA feed was like embedded on the school webpage, that would be different. Yeah, great questions, Grace. All right, so there are two ways, once you've identified that something is an education record, there are two ways that a school might be legally allowed to post that photo, video, whatever, online. One of them is by like directly getting parent consent. So a parent is like, yes, I am telling you that I am okay with this. The other one is the directory information exception. And I just kind of want to make sure that we're clear on these. One thing that's been interesting to me is that a lot of schools seem to have both, which I think could be kind of confusing. And if someone was feeling ambitious, you might want to consider deciding how to handle that in your district, because, for example, it's possible that a parent might say, you know, I want to opt out of this, and then they sign, and so they're basically saying, don't post photos of my kid through this. But the directory information notice and opt out is a totally separate thing. So if they if they didn't opt out through that method, then in your SIS or wherever you keep track of that kind of thing, it could look like, oh, the parent is okay with this. The fact that there's like a duplicate place where a parent is addressing their consent for student photos, to me seems like it could be problematic. The way you might want to handle that is by removing photos and videos of a student off of the directory information notice, and just letting the media consent form handle all of that stuff. Does this make any sense? Robert, you went like confused eyebrows. Oh, okay. Any questions about how a media release is different from a directory information notice? The reason a media release form is a little bit stronger in terms of parent consent is because with the directory information notice, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Basically, you have to just provide the notice to parents. That might be like in the student handbook or something, someplace that it's pretty likely that a lot of parents won't ever see it. And then there's a little line in there that's like, if you don't want us to share this information, you gotta let us know. Some people in their SIS, they have it built in a place to opt out. Drew, I know you were talking about how they tend to just opt out. That must be part of your automated system.
It's part of our annual school enrollment.
Right.
All of this is.
I know a lot of charter schools though, they have, it's like a separate document and they don't collect that opt out as a part of the registration process. So you really would just be relying on a parent kind of digging through the paperwork to even know about that. I personally, I like the media release form. I like that a parent has to actively say, I'm okay with this. But that's just me. Yeah.
How specific should we be about, I mean, there's lots of questions you could ask, so.
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually, I talked with there's a gal at, what is it, Merit Academy, John? Whitney Clegg, she's awesome, and she was telling us how she handles specifically the directory information opt-out, but you could do something similar with media release. She had a lot of parents saying, opting out of everything, but she broke it down to say, with a follow-up question, she said, are you okay with students' photos or videos on the website? Someone might say, no, I'm not okay with that. Do you want your kid in the yearbook? Yes, I want that. Do you want your kid to be listed on the honor roll? Yes, I want that. And she had about 5 things that were like the most common places where they would share student data. Everything else, the parent could, anything else, and they could opt out, for example. Problem with that is it creates it's a lot more difficult to track the documentation of that. You guys that are in charter schools are much better suited to handle that kind of nitty gritty than a large district. Even still, that doesn't mean that it's easy to do. So did that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I'm just gonna click through here pretty quickly. Do people feel okay with the idea of directory information? Okay. Do you want me to just remind you what it is? Anyone? Okay, so directory information is in FERPA. The people who wrote FERPA were like, okay, everything is like super tight. No one can have access to it except parents. Oh, and like school officials, people who work for the school. And that's it, no one else. And then smartly, they wrote in this little exception that was like, okay, but we recognize that schools need to make publications. We want them to still be able to post or print a yearbook, to print a school playbill, to post kids who are in the honor roll. So they wrote this exception that is intended to allow schools to do public publications. And what the school does is they say, these are the types of data that we consider directory information. I think the word where that came from is the fact that one of the goals of this exception was to allow schools to have a school directory that you pass out to kids. They're kind of more the basic things, their name, address, that kind of thing, including a school photo often. And then they say, little tiny in there, but parent, if you don't want us to share this information in public publications, you can tell us that and we'll make sure that we don't. That's the history of the directory information opt-out notice. Okay, well, let's get into the should. Oh, really quickly. We decided this is a education record. So can you post it? Yes, if you either have parent consent or you've checked to make sure they haven't been opted out of directory information. If that kid their parent had not signed a media release form, I'd probably go with that and assume that the parent wouldn't want you to post this photo. What about this one? You need to look up all 5 of those girls, check to see the media release status or directory information status. What if, that girl, her parents had opted her out? Yeah, can't post the photo, or you could crop it, I guess, to cover around it. Okay, so let's get into the should. I just want to kind of brainstorm with you guys. Tell me some of the things, well, let me pause and back up and say, I've spent a lot of time going through social media feeds for schools and districts and also their websites. And sometimes to me, the question that always comes back to me is like, what is the goal of posting that? And I'm like, I literally don't know the answer, partly because I'm not a parent, partly because I'm not a student. So I want you guys to tell me, what are schools trying to accomplish by posting on their social media feeds and their school websites? Just shout it out.
I would say advertisement.
Especially charter schools. Charter schools need to kind of market their own school, right?
Community engagement.
Good. Community engagement.
I'll be honest, pictures look better than bunches of text.
Yep.
So,
You're more likely to get,
Really, parents like to see their students on the web, whether they,
okay.
a lot of parents.
yeah,
do.
even if
A
they've
lot
already
are
opted
like,
out, they still
"Woo."
wanna see what people.
Yeah.
Student recognition.
Yeah,
Yep.
great.
School culture.
School culture. Oh, John.
And it's so much better to show that with your own students than trying to recreate it with stock photos.
Yes. That's totally true. Anything else you want me to add? Okay, so with that in mind, I want to start, we're gonna look through several photos through the lens of should the school post it? And a big part of the should is establishing what the purpose is and if it even meets that purpose. So these are the questions we're gonna ask. What is the intended purpose of the post? Does it even accomplish that? If not, then you just don't even bother, right? There's no need to just like vomit student information on a social media feed if no one cares about it. How would the student feel about it? How would a parent feel about it? And is there anything unnecessary that you can just get rid of? Okay, so, and if you guys want, this slideshow will be available to you, so if you wanted to kind of document these questions, just know that you'll have access to this. Okay, I love this picture for this reason. Okay, check out that picture. What is the intended purpose of posting this photo? I see, is it Jadine, is that how you say it? Jadine is kind of blowing my I don't even know, does anyone know the purpose of posting this photo?
That it was a sunny day. And
You show how hard cross country is.
Yeah, we wanna know how miserable students are.
Well, it's
But we wanna
possible,
know that dude is just like walking around.
it's possible that people who are familiar would recognize maybe that girl as a
Mhm.
cross-country star coming in first place, or maybe last place, or
Right,
or
right.
whatever, but to the general public, you wouldn't know that.
Right, and my question would be, even if that girl was the one who won the race, back to the question of how would the student feel? I mean, she doesn't look awful, but she's like wiping her face and her eyes are closed, like, is that like the photo, is that student gonna be like, yes, this is on the social media feed, I'm so glad they put that picture up there. They might actually like actively not want it on there, or at the very least, they probably are just like, whatever, they don't care. I think this is a great example of a picture that, when I see this, I'm like, just don't even put it up there. Me personally. It should also be noted that this was one of 7 other photos. So what you see a lot is someone will go take a bunch of pictures, they took 10 pictures, they just send all 10 pictures to the person who posts on social media. Person who posts just posts all 10 of them, without kind of like a vetting of like, did we even want this picture and post it? You know, that's a step that is missing in the workflow. It's just kind of analyzing the should, right?
Well, someone sent them to them, so of course they wanna post it.
Yeah, you know what, and Robert, I've been thinking about that, because could there be a situation where the person who sent him was like, why did you post this photo, that's my favorite photo, I don't know.
But what you're saying is so true. The first person sends them, just here's all the pictures, expecting the second person to vet them, and they get the pictures, expecting them to be vetted.
Right.
So, there's no checks and balances. in.
And it takes time.
It does, it takes time. You know, I've been thinking about this and I thought, as a science teacher, we used to do cool stuff that's like very photogenic, you know, really cool, like, look, they have beakers or whatever. So we would often take photos and send them to our social media folks. In our school, it was the secretary. As a teacher, I don't know, do I have time to go through, like, maybe you establish some kind of like norm, like send me your 3 best. That was probably, someone could probably quickly decide that that's not one of the best ones before they ever send them.
So I'm thinking of a couple possible scenarios. This could be the cross-country coach saying, okay, these 2 people, the one on the left and the one on right, are trying to support their team members. They're yelling or they're pointing to support somebody else in the race. This is how we do that. But this could also be the photography teacher teaching, okay, this is what you don't wanna post. And yeah, you're taking 50 shots, but do these 5.
Right, that's a really good point. And the fact that I left off the caption that went with it that's unfair, because that little piece of information would have told us what they intended to do with this. Any other thoughts on this picture?
What was the caption?
I think it was something like, great job, Logan high school kids at the track meet.
That doesn't portray that at all to me.
Right, to me, I agree. To me, that doesn't show like success. John?
So I have a question. That girl is in your school and she's not super happy with that. What kind of mechanism does she have in order to have that redacted or taken down?
You know, I actually saw it when I was going through feeds to prepare for this. I saw this one post, it had 6 photos in it. Someone had commented, you know how you can comment like on the post in general and not on specific photos? So someone had commented, you should probably take this photo down. And I don't know if maybe they already did take the photo down. I don't know what the photo was. Maybe they didn't. And that person, I wasn't sure which photo should have been taken down. But that was really interesting to me. Like, clearly someone was like, hey, we don't want this on here. Either something that's still there or maybe they already took it down. But also, that's kind of embarrassing to be like a public comment, like, take this picture of I'm waving my face.
Knowing a 16-year-old girl, she's not gonna.
Yeah. Okay, how are we doing on time?
Got 15 minutes.
Do we really?
Until 10:10?
Are we ending at 10:10?
That's what the agenda says.
Okay, sweet. All right, now you guys, what I wish I had done is given you, I wanted to give you the slideshow and have you just kind of choose some of these photos as a group to talk about. I didn't give you the link, I forgot. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna pull up a slide. I do still want you to talk about it in groups though. So maybe groups of 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. And you're just gonna walk through those questions. What's the purpose? Does it meet the purpose? How would the student feel? How would the parent feel? Is there anything that could be removed? Does that sound okay to everyone? And we'll do a few of those and then we'll come back and talk together about the results. Okay, so let's see. There are 75, I think, posts. So I'm gonna have to just kind of, okay, let's start with this one. And some of them I've given you a little context. For example, this picture is one of 5 photos in this post. Okay, go ahead and just kind of turn to someone nearby you, small groups, and start asking yourself those 5 questions there. Ready, go. Can you guys read this? Do you want me to read it to you?
Some students in the House of Phoenix, or House of the Month, were honored for kindness and academic success. Way to go, Phoenix.
What does that mean? Are they like Hogwarts when they have houses?
I think that's probably what it is.
Just need to be clear.
I don't think it shows. Okay, take 60 seconds to finish your discussion on this photo. Check out my school social media.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Intended purpose, what do you think? What's that? To celebrate of this accomplishment of the students. Okay, good. So yeah, I would say this isn't just like advertising something cool that goes on in the school, though that might be like a secondary intended purpose. But it seems like it's specifically wanting to recognize these kids. All right, how does it meet that intended purpose?
I say not very well.
Tell us why.
Because first of all, you can't see any of the certificates that they've been given. The little girl in the white's blocking the girl behind her, so
Oh, yeah.
you can't really see what she got. It looks, the little boy looks like,
They don't look
get me out of here.
Yeah.
I don't wanna be here.
Yeah,
And was that all the students that got awards that day, or?
right. The other pictures look like there's probably more kids there in this
Yeah.
one.
Is that blonde woman supposed to be?
She's
in
a
the
judge,
picture,
if you
or
could
was it
see.
just talk?
Yeah, you can tell, if I remove that, you can see she's just like walking across, like it's
Yeah.
totally an accident that she's
Yeah.
in the picture.
So now we're really judging what the photographer has done.
Right, shame on them. That's what the whole goal is, right?
And on the other hand, you're not gonna get all kids smiling all the time, impossible.
Right.
In elementary school.
Or
So-
our school.
I mean, ideally, you'd probably just get those kids lined up and take one picture and post it.
Really, could there have been a better picture out of the whole array? Just use.
Exactly, I agree with that very much. Like, if it was me, you can't see this, but I probably just would have posted that one picture.
Yeah.
There's no benefit to showing this one where the kid's eyes are closed, you know?
Well, they're all looking different ways, so what
Yeah.
the heck's going on there?
So it's not like in every situation you have the perfect opportunity to take a great picture, but if they could, straight on, take a picture, post that one photo. There's no need to do like 50 of them.
There's no need, there's nothing that you can, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Exactly. That's
If you
true.
post the one picture, you've already exposed all the kids have.
Right, let's just do it 5
And
times.
someone is saying, let's just do it 5 or 4 more times.
Yeah, that's a really fair point, Robert. And actually, the only thing about this picture is, I just feel like that kid, that's not like the most flattering representation of this kid on his award day. So,
Looks like they're
You know
really
the
proud.
parents
yeah,
not gonna be.
or thinks he's
Yeah.
very bored. That's the only thing I would probably take into consideration on that one. Okay, great discussion, you
But
guys.
the law doesn't take into effect how a student feels or a parent feels.
Hey, that's a good point.
That's the should.
Oh, man. Okay, let's do one from, oh, I like this one. Let's do this one. Actually, let's do this one. Okay, again, this is 1 out of 5 photos. You can see the other photos have some close-up pictures of students. All right, ready to go, talk about it.
They're there.
Well, you need to.
You're identifying.
purpose of it. Yeah, the first picture is great.
Yeah.
Really gonna show that all these
What's that? That picture conveys a really cool message without identifying any kids. But that's because I'm thinking about it from the perspective of like, we wanna advertise the coolness of the school. But what about parents? They don't care about schools. Right, right. So this is a good example of one where like, you have to really know what you're doing.
But see, me as a parent, I'd be like zooming in,
Well, and I wonder too, like, how many parents actually follow these seats? I legitimately don't know.
my son said, it's good for wallets, and what's that like,
Could be wondering how many kids are taking it.
Is this a student?
Yeah, if I was, I mean, those kids have gotta be old enough to go on for sure like that. Odds are they probably have.
Yeah, these are middle school.
Conversely, so they're, yeah, they're probably.
But then,
Oh, no,
it's like, mom does
Okay, let's hear your thoughts. I'm especially curious to know your thoughts on the purpose. We were kind of discussing different possible purposes here. What do you think the intended purpose of this post is?
Maybe to advertise that they take their kids out on field trips and they are connecting them with nature.
Right, to me, that's what I read as, again, not a parent, so I have a different lens, I think. But I thought this is like a really cool photo to show what goes on in your school. Without, you wouldn't even, I don't think you'd even have to check for directory information opt-outs for this picture, from what I can tell.
Except for poor Paul James. We just wanna make sure that.
Right, we don't care about
Developed is not my problem.
But
I'll sign on for this.
someone brought up, was it you, Whitney, that said, like, she was thinking, if I'm looking for my kid, that's a crappy photo. Because you can't see any of the individual students.
Yeah, but it's totally legal.
Right, and this actually could be an argument in favor of multiple pictures. One thing that I love is I love this picture. These are just 5 boys.
I don't like that picture.
Really?
I look at that picture and I say, they're not following the rules on that hike.
Okay, I have a very similar opinion. These boys, I'm just gonna be totally stereotypical, when I looked at their pictures, they kind of look like the boys that were just kind of turds.
They're running down the hill and not staying.
Yeah, they're not following the rules, but those kind of kids, it's so hard to catch them, and they're not gonna be recognized for Student of the Month. Any chance you can get to put them on social media in a way that makes them feel tied to the school, like they're involved in the school, to me, that's really powerful. So that's interesting, because to me, this is one of my favorite photos. Especially if I knew that these kids were gonna be looking at my social media feed. I feel like this would help them feel tied to their community and their school. That they're not just turds. Oh, 3 minutes?
I would just say too that like, I guess my biggest takeaway from seeing this is that there's an art to it. There really is an art to the photography aspect of it, right? Are you even taking decent pictures in the first place? But then the art of what is the intended purpose? Like, you know, whoever is posting this has to be cognizant of what are they trying to sell with the pictures? There really is kind of an art to the law, I guess you could say, in order to keep it engaging but yet compliant.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be really interesting to get, like, I feel like we're all kind of guessing. Do parents actually look at these feeds or not? Do students look at these feeds or not? If you could get some, like, more information about who who's looking at these feeds, it could help you decide what kind of pictures to put on there.
I'm not worried about the parents and students, I'm worried about people that are not associated with the school.
Exactly, yeah,
Like
so.
you.
Can you say that again?
Wait, what do you mean, like judging the way the school goes, or from a privacy perspective? Okay, I'll show you this one, just really quickly, I'll just tell you, to me, when I see this photo, this feels like a, kind of like a marketing type photo. Like, look how happy these kids are at APA. That's not a bad thing, but I will just point out that, like, I feel like something that's being used for marketing warrants an extra level of scrutiny. Like, if it were me, I would contact each of these kids' parents and be like, we're gonna put them on the banner on the website, it's gonna be there for a while, how do you feel about that? And if they're not cool with it, don't post it. There's a different level of publicness of this photo, you know, and also the intent of it. Like, you could feel kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like taken advantage of. If a parent were to see that this is used kind of in a marketing kind of way. Okay, we'll do one more. Let's see, I'm gonna get this high school one that I really like.
How many of you are gonna go back and look at your social media feeds?
And I hope you guys know that, like, the goal of this is not to be overly strict. I wouldn't expect all of your social media folks to be like, analyze every photo in detail. But I guess it's just, the goal is to just kind of like build awareness. All right, Hope Squad scavenger hunt. Does everyone know what Hope Squad is? It's a group of students that are designed to kind of help identify other students who are at risk of suicide or have other struggles. It's like a way to build a positive community in the school. Keep an eye out for the kids who are struggling. So this, I'm curious to know what the goal of this was.
It looks like the adult is the focus in it. I mean, she's in every picture.
Right,
which
she's
is
an administrator, I think.
She's taking selfies.
But I think that's strange to have her in every picture.
So check it out, the heading says, Hope Squad scavenger hunt during lunch. Take a selfie with a Hope Squad member. So this was actually like an activity that they advertised around the school. What is the goal of that activity?
Or a person, most likely a student, but in this case, it's an administrator, to take a picture with Hope Squad. That's what she's done. She has collected selfies with each of these Hope Squad people.
And like, to what end though?
For her to fulfill the, hey, go get a picture with her.
Oh, just to be obedient?
I think she might be trying to recruit more
And
to
it,
her
well,
club.
and to get other people, yeah, to recruit, to get other people as part of Hope Squad.
Yeah, my guess is that they were trying to build awareness. They wanted the kids in the school to know who was on the Hope Squad. That's like a big goal of schools is, we have this Hope Squad, we need kids to know that these are people you can reach out to. The interesting thing about that though is that, again, I'm not sure if kids are following their school's they're not even on Facebook, so like, would they be following this? Probably not, but maybe it would get to them in a roundabout way because their parents saw it, I don't know.
Oh, they follow us.
They do? Do they even have Facebook? Really? Interesting. I don't know anything about kids these days. All right, well, with one, we got 2 minutes left, right? 3
I
minutes
think we're
left.
2 minutes over, but
What?
we're good.
Oh, it's 10. Okay, we're done.
So in the end, you're saying that this is okay, we probably would have had releases for all of those kids anyway.
Yeah, you would, with that question, you'd wanna just check and make sure that there's no opt-outs or they all have media releases.
I mean, my question with this, are they soliciting other students to take pictures of the Hope Squad and then post them on Facebook under that thing?
Yeah, I don't know if
That creates
it
like
could
an
be that they
exponential-
asked teachers to and not students, I don't know. In the feed, this person was the only one who had done that. Interesting. Cool, well, this has been a really fun discussion, you guys, I loved this. Here's an activity that I think you might find helpful if you, we'll send this slideshow out to you later, but, on the note of like not overdoing it,
I'm sorry, could I mention one other thing?
Yes, please.
It occurs to me that if these selfies were probably taken from a cell phone.
Uh-huh.
Whose cell phone? Was it the administrators, and now does she have all these pictures on her cell phone, and where do they go from there? This seems like another layer of something to worry about.
It is. Anytime you get personal devices in the mix, it's tricky. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I will just say one more thing. I encourage you guys to ask your schools to get in the habit of deleting posts. When you're in 7th grade, you look a certain way. When you're in 12th grade, you look a different way. And I would not love my 7th grade photos to be on the web indefinitely. So, consider like purging your posts. You just go through and delete stuff that has student data in it every year or every 2 years. I don't think that would be a bad practice.
Yeah, that comes back to record retention, because it is a student record in a sense, and you're maintaining it, so you would have to meet the retention expectations of the educational schedule.
Yeah, good point, John. It's more than just best practice. If you get a chance, this was very enlightening to me. I found these 3, all of them are middle schools, and I pulled up their feeds, and just quickly scrolling through, I got like a different feel about the school from each of them. And it just occurred to me that there's a balance in what we're trying to accomplish. I don't believe the goal is no photos of students ever, period. I don't think that needs to be the goal. It's possible that that's what your school wants to do. A lot of elementary schools do go that route. But yeah, take a look at these. It's just kind of fun to like see how other people might perceive your social media feed by looking at theirs. Okay, you guys, this is great. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna, do we have 10 minutes? 10-minute
We're
break?
gonna take a little break, yeah.
Okay, so take a break, go to who knows where the bathrooms are, but go to them if you want.
Bathrooms are right across the hall right here.
And if you wanna switch to the other room for the next session, you can.
What was it again? Can you remind me?
Oh yeah, this is gonna be data breach response. So like incident response plans. This one is John with,
All of the resources and things that we've developed over time. Keep in mind we're recording this, all of it will be available, but like all the record retention, just things that our team has developed to help you have stuff that you can then give to your faculty. And so.
awesome. And if you haven't already, take a minute to write down a few